Hi students, this is Suchadatta teaching economics to class 11 and here I am with the 9th chapter and the name of the chapter is Environment and Sustainable Development. Let me start with the journey of mankind from the primitive age to the modern age. From the age when man used to pluck fruits from the trees, and now the age when man has food not only produced in the fields but also various other types of foods which are produced in the industries and factories. An age when man used to hardly wear any clothes. It used to be the skin of the animals or the bark of the trees. And now when we talk of so many fibers, synthetic, nylon, cotton and so on. At that time when the man's shelter used to be a cave or under the tree, and now we talk of such modern homes that we cannot even imagine what kind of homes the mankind has made. So this development or this story of mankind, the journey of mankind from the primitive age to the modern age is indeed a significant development. But all this development must have had certain good and bad points, certain positives and certain negatives. You've seen all the positive points, the development on the roads, that is transport, communication, foods and everywhere. But the most negative part of this development is that it has reduced the resource endowment for the future generation. We have limited the resources for the coming generations. There has been extraction of the resources to its fullest, which is indeed not a very positive sign. Now, what exactly is environment? Environment is in fact the air, water and land and its interrelationship with each other. That is termed as environment. So, everything that is around us, given to us, bestowed to us by the gift of nature is termed as environment. Now, this environment is definitely very significant and its significance is as follows. First of all, environment offers resources for production. There are so many things, the wood, the things in the environment which definitely help us in production. If those things were not there, if those were not given to us by the environment, production would have been impossible. So, in fact, environment is like a god which has helped mankind in the production process. Second is, environment sustains life. It is not only the giver, but it is also the preserver. So, almost acting like a god, God when gives it and then preserves it too. So, here too it sustains our life by doing what? By giving us water, air and land, without which mankind would have not sustained. Thus, it is a giver as well as the one who sustains. The next is, it enhances the quality of life. There are mountains, forests, streams and so on. If these were not there, the quality of man's life would have been zero, because the environment beauty adds to the quality of life and no human being can produce hills, mountains, rivers and so on. It is definitely the gift of nature, the environment that is there. Next is, it assimilates waste. Mankind produces lots of waste and it is this beautiful environment which takes away, which assimilates all this waste into itself. So, how beautifully we can say that environment is the one who gives us, who sustains us, who improves our living, and which also sees to it that whatever waste we are producing, that also is assimilated by this beautiful environment. So, we have to take care of this environment, we have to protect this environment, we have to safeguard this environment. This beautiful environment faces two big problems, and those are pollution and second is excessive exploitation. As far as pollution is concerned, there are three kinds of pollution which harm the environment in a big way, and those are air pollution, water pollution and the noise pollution. The air pollution is caused by the smokes and the gases which come out of the factories, and also the vehicles which run on the roads. All this smoke, dust adds to the pollution of the environment. Then as far as water is concerned, this water gets polluted because of the domestic and the industrial waste. All that is done by the mankind or by the human beings knowingly and unknowingly add to the beautiful environment's degradation. Next is the noise pollution, which has become much more than the other two pollutions, and this is emitted by the industrial and also the household things. For example, the mixer and the grinders in the households, and also in the industries and the factories wherein lot of noise is made during production. So, air, water and the noise pollution is creating havoc in the environment, which is very, very bad for the coming generations. Next is the excessive exploitation of environment. Whatever we do has to be done in a very judicious manner. If we start exploiting, over exploiting, that is the time that we can see that there is a doomsday. Because if our future generations are not safe, we cannot think of good quality life even for ourselves, because we will not be wise forefathers. Well, deforestation is the first result of excessive exploitation. When the Britishers arrived in India, they needed timber for building the Royal Navy, they needed timber for building the railways, and here the process of deforestation started. Now, whether it is the poverty which forces the human beings to fell trees, or it is the requirement of the factories and the industries and the development which is going on, deforestation has taken its a very bad shape, and thus it definitely is what is called as excessive exploitation. Next is degradation. Degradation means the first step of it is soil erosion. Soil erosion is washing off the top layer of the soil, and when soil erosion occurs, it leads to infertility in the soil. There is lot of changes which occur in the soil which leads to so many problems. And of course, the alkalinity and the salinity of the soil is also responsible for the degradation of the soil. And when such things start happening, when we start exploiting the soil by using means to increase the production or by doing such things which are of course very fruitful for the present generation, but if it is harmful for the coming generations, it is definitely a big thing which we are doing in order to see that our future generations do not live in peace and harmony. So, what kind of generation are we? Very selfish and selfish, of course. Let us talk of the environmental degradation causes. as to what are those factors which are responsible for the degradation of environment. The first factor is the population explosion. When the population starts increasing many folds, there is a lot of pressure which falls on the environment. To feed these growing mouth, we have to have some kind of pressure on the environment leading to its degradation. The second is the widespread poverty. In a country like India, when so many people are living below the poverty line, when they do not have sufficient to eat, that is the time there will be environmental degradation. The people have to resort to measures which are not good for the environment in order to fulfill their basic needs. Then we have the urbanization. With the fast growing urbanization, that is people moving from the rural to the urban areas, and the advancement in the urban areas, the building of infrastructure in the urban areas is leading to the degradation of the environment, because we start exploiting the environment at the length, at the pace at which we should not. Next is the use of fertilizers and manures like the pesticides, the insecticides, the chemical fertilizers, which are not at all good for the land, and thus it leads to environmental degradation. Then we have the industrialization. Industrialization is both a boon and a bane. On one side, it gives plenty to mankind, and on the other side, it is the biggest factor which leads to the noise pollution, to the water pollution, to the air pollution. So, the biggest factor is industrialization. Then next is the vehicles. So many vehicles moving on the roads, transmitting so much of smoke, is leading to environmental degradation. And then we have disregard of civic norms. In India, due to illiteracy, people do not follow the civic norms set for safeguarding environment. They pay no heed to these norms because they feel that it is not their responsibility. Their responsibility is just to sustain, to earn, and to have a good standard of living for themselves and their families. They do not bother of the environment because they do not have the knowledge. They are not literate in that sense. Well, as far as the state of environment is concerned in India, we will be shocked to hear that India has almost 15% of the world population, but only 2% of its area is under forest. So, which means a very alarming state as far as environment is concerned. And when I talk of the state of environment in India, it is very paradoxical also, because now we are almost at the 10 most industrialized countries in the world, but we are also the ones who are having the worst kind of environmental degradation in the country. It could be due to illiteracy, due to poverty, due to population explosion, due to the kind of industries which are being set up, the fertilizers which we are using, but the state remains that India, in spite of being industrially much ahead than so many nations, is far behind as far as environment protection is concerned. So, this environmental degradation which is coming in India in spite of the development is very paradoxical in nature, and we have to see that we start safeguarding our environment to its best. We have to save our environment by following methods. First of all, by social awareness. We have to go and tell the people, we have to spread this message that environment is in fact a must for our survival. We have to tell them that as much as we love our homes, we have to love our environment. So this message or this awareness has to be created amongst the people of India. Then next is population control. If population is controlled, then half of the problem of the environmental degradation will be solved automatically, because the environmental pressure will be reduced and thus environment would actually be in its control as it should be. Next is Environment Conservation Act. If the people do not understand, by just spreading awareness, there has to be stringent laws and we have to pass certain acts in order to protect, in order to conserve our environment. When the Britishers started with the policy of social forestry in India, when they told the people that they cannot enter the forest and start felling the trees because it is their right as they have been doing, this was disliked by the people in India in the beginning. And they protested, but slowly and gradually they realized that this was very important for the future generation. And thus, even now in India, we have to have such conservation acts which will have a deep impact in the conservation of environment. Then is the afforestation campaign. Whether it is schools, colleges or other places, we have to instill amongst the people of India that afforestation is very important, that we have to plant more trees in order to have a greener, safer and healthy environment. Thus, such kind of campaigns have to be encouraged everywhere in order to safeguard our environment. Next is control of the industrial and agricultural pollution. Our industries should have such devices, should have such norms that there is less pollution. Our agriculture should start following organic farming so that the health of the soil is maintained. And therefore, by such methods, we will be able to control the pollution levels of the country and thereby safeguard the environment. Next is, we have to have proper management of the solid waste in the country. The chemical treatment plants have to be installed so that there is a proper management of the solid waste and there is no pollution. Next is the improvement in the housing. Well, if I talk of another history, that is the history of England, at a time when London started becoming industrialized, lot of people started migrating from the rural to London city and thus the housing became a big problem and lots of people started dwelling in slums. It were the rich people who came forward to see that there are proper houses for the poor in London. Why did this happen? Because the poor housing, the slums in the areas are in fact a great disaster, because by this spreads the pollution, by this spreads the fire hazards, by this spreads the also the social, if you see kind of lot of problems in the social or in the society. That is, we will have lot of criminals staying here because the petty thieves will come from here, since they will not be able to sustain their living. Therefore, we have to have improvement in the housing areas. We have to clear the slums and have proper houses in order to save our much required environment. Now, next important factor or the next important topic is sustainable development. In a layman's term, development is all round development. In the factories, the industries, the agriculture, on the infrastructure, when you have development everywhere, that's termed as development. But sustainable development means when we develop in such a manner that we do not develop just for today, but we have the future in mind. When we develop in such a manner that we do not exploit the resources available to us and leave it for the future generation, as our forefathers have left for us, we have to leave for the coming generations. And a true sustainable development comes only when per capita income arises, that is, people start earning much more than what they are earning, when we start using the rational use, or we start having rational use of the environment that is there, when we have lesser pollution, that is, we can have control on the pollution, and we think of the future generation, that's true sustainable development. Rising in the per capita income, but using the present day resources in a rational manner, having control over the pollution and having a thought about the future generation is truly sustainable development. Now let me talk about the strategies of sustainable development. As far as the strategies are concerned, the first thing is we need to have input efficient technology. That is technology which can produce more by using lesser energy. So thus the pressure on the environment will be less. The second is environment friendly energy. Instead of using coal, we can use LPG, CNGs and such which give less pollution, and thus this environment friendly energy is definitely required for the sustainable development. Next is integrated rural development. If we look at the development not only in the urban areas but also in the rural areas, that is the time the people will migrate less from the rural areas to the urban areas, and thus the problems will be solved. The problem of housing, the problem of sanitation, the problem of use of transport, all will become less, and thus we will have the development which will be termed as sustainable development. Next is the use of organic farming. Of course, with the use of fertilizers, insecticide, pesticides, we have increased the output in the farming, but now it is time to shift to organic farming so that the fertility of the soil retains, the health of the soil is there, is retained in order to have a good soil for the coming generations, which will be leading towards the sustainable development. Next is the use of solar energy. Let's start using more of solar energy by using the solar cookers, by using solar energy in our houses everywhere that we can. With this, definitely the impact will be that we will have lesser hold or pressure on the energy which is there from other sources, leading to sustainable development. And use of solar energy is not that difficult as we in India think. If we have so much of abundance of solar energy available, let's start making judicious use of this solar energy. Next is by recycling the waste. Let's not use something and throw it away. Let's not use and then throw. Let's not make this a habit. Let's start recycling our waste. Let's start using that waste so that the pressure on environment becomes less, leading to good sustainable development. Then is that we have to create awareness in the public, and programs like Chipko movement in the north and the Apiko movement in the south are definitely a contribution towards sustainable development. When people started clinging to the trees so that nobody fells them, nobody cuts them, and thus this awareness is much required in India in order to have sustainable development. Then the use of public transport. instead of using our own private transports, that is, instead of using just solely my own car, let me start pooling it with people around me. Let me start using the metros, let me start using the public transport, buses, railways and so on, so that there is lesser transmission, there is lesser emission of smoke in the environment. And by all these methods, if we use them, if we actually apply them in our lives, definitely we are moving towards sustainable development. So this was all about your chapter, which in fact is very interesting and also a must for you to know, so that you are a good citizen of tomorrow and you are a part of the sustainable development, and as a student of economics you have to contribute in the sustainable development of the country. Thank you.